Okay, I would like to take a few moments to talk about the Breeding Bunnies Lab. This is item 14 in your Kingdom Animalia table of contents. The lab looks like this. As always, you need to do reading and highlighting ahead of time. So you are going to need some containers. If you look in my AP cabinet in the back of the room, there are some containers already set up from previous years. Some of them have homozygous recessive, heterozygous, and then of course homozygous dominant. If you look at my household cabinet, there's some empty cups if you need some more. You're also going to need red and white beans. I would have about 3 to 4 people per group. So after you've done your reading and highlighting, you are going to have to fill in the hypothesis section. So it says, how does natural selection affect gene frequency over several generations? You know, we want the better suited of whatever it is we're talking about, in this case, bunnies, to survive and go on, or well, they're going to, okay? So you need to fill in the first 2 spots down to where it says hypothesis. And then you're also going to predict what would happen over 10 generations. So for this lab, you're going to take red beans, which are going to represent the allele for fur, and white beans represent the allele for no fur on beans. The container, whatever container we are using, represents the English countryside where the randoms randomly meet. So you're going to label one dish homozygous dominant, label a second one heterozygous, and a third one homozygous recessive. Again, I have a bunch of these made already, but you're more than welcome to make more if you need be. So you're going to take 50 red and 50 white beans in a container and shake them up or mate the rabbits, okay? This is just an arbitrary number that was picked for us. Without looking at the beans, it says select 2 at a time, because remember, you get an allele for each trait from each biological parent. So for these rabbits, we're doing the trait of fur, so are they getting a capital F from mom or lower, and what about from the dad's side kind of thing? So you're going to pull 2 beans at the same time. So for instance, it says if you draw 1 red and 1 white bean, place a mark in the chart under number of capital F, lower F, or heterozygous individuals. Continue drawing pairs of beans, recording the result in your chart until all beans have been selected and sorted. Place the rabbits into the appropriate container. So we're not putting them back in. So if you draw, you know, your 2 red beans, and that is your capital F, you put them in that container, and so on. It says the homozygous recessive bunnies are born furless. The cold weather kills them before they reach the reproductive age, so they can't pass on their genes. So this is why we're keeping them out. Any of the ones that are homozygous recessive, so 2 white, you place in here, we're actually just going to get rid of them, and they're not going to be able to move on. So if you look at your data chart, generation number 1, you literally will put tally marks of how many you get of each, okay? Then you count how many capital Fs, how many lower Fs, how many total. You need to figure out gene frequency. Your frequencies should add up to 0.1 or 100%. And then you do what it says, okay? In this case, we get rid of all of our homozygous recessive because they can't move on, and then you continue on in the process until you have done 10 generations. Now, for this lab, you will be writing a rerun. I do not want headings. It needs to be double spaced, third person, you know the font, you know the margins. For this one, I would like 2 things. I would like a beautiful chart, the same chart you have here, okay? And then this one is done by hand, but I think we can move on and use Google Sheets, and you need to make a chart. So you need to label it something like allele frequency per generation, and since we are doing multiple generations, but we're also doing capital Fs and lower Fs, you're going to have multiple types of lines and multiple colors of lines. This needs to be in your second R, and you need to talk about it. It is not sufficient enough just to say, here's the data. You need to talk about it, okay? And then make sure we address our R, E, and then our U and N, of course. When you go to turn in a lab, you'll put the packet on top, rerun with graph and chart on bottom. Please keep in mind that you also have some Breeding Bunnies discussion questions that you will need to address, questions 1 through 7 on the back of the packet. So that is Breeding Bunnies, item 14 in our table of contents.